I don't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, now I hear you.
Well, welcome to a Cinco de Mayo edition, a Friday edition of Seminole Sidelines. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm not sure what happened there. But we are back. My name is Pat Burnham. I am joined by Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. And Fish, obviously a lot going on in college football right now. The evaluation period, college coaches are on the road all over the place. Florida State's got guys in Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee. We've had them up in the Midwest this week and obviously all over Florida. And it's a big recruiting weekend for Florida State as they will welcome in two portal prospects and really good one in Keon Coleman and then one in safety Jaylen from UAB that I don't know a whole lot about. But listen, Mike has done a really good job and his staff of attacking the portal. Just give me your thoughts on. We'll start with Keon. Let's get right into it. Keon, you don't get a chance, in my opinion, to get a receiver like him every day in the portal. He led the Michigan State team in receiving yards, receptions, touchdown catches, and just had a spectacular year. Was third team All Big Ten as a true sophomore. Obviously Florida State's deep at wide receiver, but they did have an opportunity or void left by Micah Pittman, who accounted for about 34 catches last year and about 400 yards. It's not really tit for tat, but it does if that's what opened this opportunity up for Keon, you almost got a chance to get a better player in here on the roster.
Yeah, when he came out of high school, we discussed him, Destin Hill, and two other receivers out of the state of Louisiana. I was really high on him just because of his physical attributes. He looked like a bigger, more physical receiver even than some of the other guys. We thought Destin Hill probably was the most polished of all the receivers at that time, but Dion had the most potential, and he's proven it so far going to Michigan State. I think he originally committed to Kansas out of high school. It made no sense. This is a guy that should be playing in the SEC at a LSU or an Auburn. He'd be a big-time get. I think he's an upgrade. But at the same time, one of my concerns with all these portal kids, you want to make sure that they fit in. A lot of guys, whether it's a Portier, whether it's a Johnny Williams, whether it's some of the younger guys that have put in the time, you want to make sure that he doesn't rock that boat. Yes, it's great to always add another player, but they are loaded at that position, and you just want to make sure that he's a fit, come in, the other players are okay with him coming in and competing and potentially taking a guy's starting job.
Well, yeah, listen, I think there's a good shot that he would be in contention for a starting job. He is. I was doing some research on him earlier today, Fish, and he is rated as a third-round draft pick in next year's draft. He's ranked as the 17th best receiver, draft-eligible receiver in college football coming into 2023 season. And, of course, if you want to compare that to where Micah Pittman is, Micah was not that we're – as I said, this is not tit for tat, but you mentioned upgrade and the chance to be a starter. Micah was rated the 60th best receiver, draft-eligible receiver moving forward for next year's draft. So, yeah, listen, it would give Florida State another huge receiver. He's 6'4", 210, 215. You couple that with Deuce Spann at 6'4", Keem Williams at 6'2", Johnny Wilson at 6'7", Darian Williamson at 6'3", and Kentron Portier at 6'3". Obviously, throwing him into there, and you haven't even started talking about Jaheim Bell and Kyle Morlock, but certainly would give FSU maybe the biggest receiving core size and lengthwise in college football. You'd have to go back and research 130 teams, but you usually don't see a college football team that's got multiple receivers over 6'4".
No, they'd have a bunch of power forwards out there high pointing the football. It would make him, he'd be a big time addition, like I said, to an already loaded offense. How times have changed. Just a couple years ago, everybody was upset with Ron Dugans. Now he's about to have the best wide receiver core in possibly college football, which would be pretty impressive considering, like I said, 2 years ago, everybody was crying about how FSU didn't have receivers.
Yeah, it's starting to remind me of about 7 or 8 years ago, Clemson receivers, right? They had a bunch of long, tall kids who could run, stretch the field. Obviously, nightmare matchups against shorter corners. So, yeah, listen, I think he is a guy, you've almost got to take him, right? If he wants to come. I'm sure there's going to be other suitors for Keon. He does have a relationship with Florida State, as Fish mentioned. He was recruited by Florida State coming out of high school. We did 3 receiver comparison, about 2 years ago, the year he signed, before he signed, and you, me, and Mark Salva all had him as our favorite receiver, and that was, as you said, Des Hill, who there's still rumors going around that he may be coming to Florida State.
Yeah, I think if Keon comes, I think we could end that conversation.
Yeah. So
that'd be the best part about it. It would just finally end that drama that some other people like to create. So.
So listen, it would be a great get for Florida State, as like I said, that wide receiver room, as most rooms have, has gotten better and better the longer Mike has been here. We've seen it on the offensive line. We're seeing a really good running back room. Tight ends look really good. You got 4 capable tight ends on this roster now, and this would give FSU its 9th receiver on scholarship if Keon were to choose Florida State. He is arriving this afternoon to Tallahassee. Will be here through Sunday. We are going to try to catch up with Keon before he leaves town on Sunday. We will try to be down at the Moore Center and catch those guys as they are exiting the building. He's going to have a companion. Well, he's going to have another portal prospect here on the visit, and that is UAB safety Jaylen Key. Jaylen is a Tallahassee, Florida native. He played at Godby High School for Corey Fuller, who is now Director of Player Development at Florida State, and of course one of the great Seminole defensive backs in the program's history. Listen, he kind of has exploded on the scene. He had not played a lot of football for UAB in 20 and 21, making 15 tackles in 17 combined games over those two years, but kind of exploded onto the scene this year. Had 60 tackles this past season, 12 of those coming against a late season game against LSU. There's not a ton of film on him, Fish. Honorable mention, All Conference USA honors this past offseason or after this past season. Did you know anything about him coming out of high school?
I definitely. I had a chance to see him at a 7-on-7 event coming out. He had some length to him. He just wasn't. I had projected him as a group of 5 kid. That's where he ended up. I didn't see a ton of upside. He was a good, solid football player. I don't think he's a guy that's going to come in and light the world on fire, but maybe just provide another quality football player in the back end of your defense. I think he could be a good addition. I don't think he's going to make a big difference to what they already have. I think they got guys that are just as good or better. It would just be adding another body to the secondary, which they do need some depth there. I think he can provide some early depth and maybe get some starting minutes here and there. But I don't think he's one of those guys that's going to change the whole back end of the defense.
Yeah, and listen, we thought Florida State might dip in for a extra safety or corner before Amarian Cooper left for Colorado. Certainly, you have to think now that, if there was any question whether they were going to take a safety or corner, they certainly are now. He's not the only one they're looking at. They are bringing in Ashlyn Barker from Iowa Western Community College. He was played at Columbus Northside High School. He will be in town next weekend for an official visit. I don't know if you had any chance to watch his tape, but I couldn't find a lot on Jaylen, at least from UAB. I watched clips of the LSU game. He appeared a couple times, but obviously that was his best single game from a tackle standpoint. You got to think Florida State's in good standing here if they want Jaylen because of his relationship with Corey Fuller, him being a Tallahassee guy. And of course, listen, he's visited Alabama. He's talking in North Carolina and Oregon, among others. So it's not out of the question in Ohio State. It's not out of the question that he could go somewhere else, but you certainly have to like their chances because of the relationship and where he's from.
Yeah, I mean, that's how most of these things are. The transfer portal kids are guys that the relationships have been there or a prior relationship. It's very rare that you'll see a guy that basically goes in the portal and nobody on the staff has a prior relationship with. You even saw with Jared First, that was someone they played against, or they were playing against Syracuse and they saw him on film. There's some connection there at some point. This kid has that connection with Florida State, especially being a local kid. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It's going to come down to what other guys can they get somebody better than him. As you stated, they are looking at some other defensive backs. I know they have to make a decision a lot of times quickly on these kids. I'd wait to see. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think they have to rush to take Jaylen. He has some ties with Florida State because of his dad, I believe, playing at Florida State. I wouldn't rush into making this decision, but that's their choice, not mine.
Yep. Yeah. Listen, they are going to bring in Ashlyn Barker, who was kind of another interesting prospect. Ashlyn did not have any FBS offers coming out of Columbus Northside High School, and now has several offers for FBS programs. And he was redshirted out at Iowa Western, and they may have a rule where if you're out of state, you have to redshirt. I know that back in the day, some of the state community colleges did that. I believe that was the way it was done in Kansas for years. You could only have so many out-of-state kids on the roster. I'm not specific on that, but he did not play for Iowa Western last year. He went through practice. You go watch his huddle tape from high school. He's got a guy that has a lot of range, kind of like Key. These true safety. Jaylen lined up at strong safety most of the time in the clips, what limited clips I saw from UAB this past year. But, certainly, do you think Florida State would be bringing two safeties?
I think it's possible. Listen, they need to upgrade the secondary. Their safety spot that's where they have some question marks. They have some young guys. I personally would like to see them develop those young guys and go that route. If you can get an elite safety prospect, then I would go that route. But the way that Quindarius played this spring, and you also have the kid from Reigns that came in this spring, I'd like to see how those guys, even though they're young and don't have a ton of experience, I do believe they have better athletic ability and upsides than some of these guys that they're looking at. I don't see the purpose of bringing somebody in just to bring them in. They better be better than what we have or FSU has. Right. Or don't bring them in at all. I think Florida State's in a position they can be picky now. They don't have to just go and take guys to take them. I think they're in a position of strength, and really they should only be taking guys that really can improve their team.
Yeah, I agree with you. And now, are you surprised? Now, one thing that you and I have talked about is, linebackers a little bit, not a whole lot of depth there. Are you surprised that they haven't brought in a linebacker yet? Or just visit out of the pool.
The whole linebacker thing is a mystery to us. Do they really not? Is a position not as important because they play more two-man linebacker? Do they play a lot of scheme, which is two linebackers, and they're just not as important? And they just figure they could get some bigger safeties and move them up into the box. We would have to talk to the coaches and really see where they're, what they're thinking on that. It'd be nice for them to bring in a linebacker. I know a lot of people would like to see them bring in a linebacker, but it just doesn't seem like a priority for them.
No, it doesn't. And listen, I've gone through the linebacker list. Of course, I don't know. You found Jared Verse at Albany. I don't know that I would even, if I'd seen his name on a list that year coming out of the portal without having some inside knowledge of the kid, just because we'd heard his name. I don't know that listen, these guys, they have departments that study this tape. They might be able to find a guy at the FBS level similar to Verse that's wanting to move up and play big boy football or big time college football. Not that the others not. It's hard to play college football. Very few people do in the grand scheme of things. But, listen, going through the list that I went through last week, no one just jumped off at me and say they need to get this guy in here or try to, So I do think the spring portal is a little watered down compared to the December portal. But listen, we'll see. Still a lot of road to hoe. I think these kids don't have to be signed and sealed and delivered until fall camp starts. So there's still plenty of time to see what happens. And, everybody's in the portal that's going to be in the portal, but certainly it's not over with yet. And listen, it's this portal thing has turned out to be very interesting. It's given us a lot to talk about, write about. It's keeping everybody busy. I would imagine that these coaches are going to come off the road tonight, get back in time for to spend some time with these portal prospects. I don't know if every coach will be back in the night when these kids arrive, but certainly it's keeping these coaches hopping, that's for sure. Now, listen, Florida State coaches have been on the road. Now, they've been offering a lot of 2025 and 2026 kids, but one 2024 four-star prospect that I like that they offered earlier this week was Bodie Cahoon from Roanoke, Virginia, Patrick Henry High School. I spoke with him after the offer. He's working on setting up an unofficial visit to Florida State. They've just started the relationship. He and Randy Shannon have only been talking for a couple of weeks. He's enjoyed the conversations and mentioned to me that, when Florida State's coming off a 10-win season, it's kind of one of those schools that you got to pay attention to. He does have a lot of good offers: North Carolina, NC State, Tennessee, Virginia Tech, UVA, Notre Dame, West Virginia. As you see there at the bottom, he's a two-sport athlete. He has college lacrosse offers, and he is either currently committed to or was committed to Ohio State to play lacrosse. And playing lacrosse is one of the reasons he's having a hard time doing some spring visits. But I don't know if you got a chance to watch his film, Fish, but he's a guy that can play sideline from sideline, very good athlete, runs very well, lines up in the middle as an inside linebacker and off the edge as an outside linebacker. So a guy that certainly looks to have the skill set necessary to play at Florida State, and a guy that, has just started his relationship with Florida State, but was one of my favorite 2024 offers over the last week. And of course they have extended some offers to some national guys for 2025 and 2026. But anyway, I'd love to get your thoughts on him if you get a chance to watch him. But
no, definitely. I mean, the one thing you notice on film is his ability to close quickly. I do like that. You want to see guys react quickly when they're on film, when they're playing linebacker. You don't want to see that false step backwards. He's someone that's aggressive, and you can see he heads downhill. He almost has that old school mentality. You could tell he has good instincts. He reads plays well on film. I'd have to see more game film, but you have to like what he does sideline to sideline. And he lines up at linebacker, which is rare these days. You'll see him in the middle of the defense, and he makes plays. He closes quickly. You could also put him off the edge and let him rush the passer. He's similar to the Nicholson kid they signed last year. These guys are hard to find now, these linebackers like this that are just good football players too. You could tell you could tell this kid has a high football IQ. He sees things quickly and reacts quickly. There's no hesitation on his footage. He does a good job of getting off blocks. He keeps his feet moving. I remember talking to Kevin Steele once. He said, the most important thing is no matter how big or small a linebacker is, they got to keep their feet moving. Once they stop and an offensive lineman gets a hold of them, the play's dead. The guy really doesn't have a chance. He does a very good job of keeping his feet moving, heading downhill, and making plays.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching his film, and listen, I hope Florida State can get him down here for a official visit, or at least an unofficial visit. Maybe get an official visit out of that. But
he's similar to your boy Kirk Carruthers. You watch the way he plays. It's kind of the same way he used to play.
I wonder if he's got Kurt's personality.
Oh, I can't. I haven't met him. I met Kurt on your podcast, so he's a little different.
Yeah. Kirk was a wild man in college, but So listen, it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, there's some. I know you're getting ready to do your stock up, stock down. One guy I wanted to ask you about. I did not prep you for this, but I know that offensive tackle prospect Ty Hilton from Oviedo. We've both felt pretty good about Florida State's chances with him. They offered him in January. He's kind of a late bloomer, and sometimes that's a good thing. Offensive linemen are generally going to be late bloomers. These big kids take longer to grow into their bodies. Ty is one of those, but he's looks like it may come down to a Florida State type battle, Fish, based on what I've been reading this week about his visit to Florida. And what are you hearing on Ty Hilton?
Yeah, he's on my stock down. I don't want to ruin the whole list for everybody that's going to take a look at it. It looks like Florida made an impact with him on a visit. You got to listen to what these guys are saying, and he's on campus there. It seems like Florida State is recruiting these guys, but once again, they're recruiting offensive line in a position of strength. They could kind of wait and see, even though they offer that kid. They'll probably get him on campus this summer. Even if he were to commit to Florida, they probably feel they could get him on campus and get him to flip. So it doesn't seem like there's that much of an urgency with some of these guys, knowing that they could always come back, especially if they have a good season, which many expect. It's a lot easier to recruit when you're in the position they are compared to Florida, who's trying to improve the team while also knowing that they may have a rough season ahead.
Yeah, I think everybody's anticipating the rough season for Florida. I hope that we're not over-exaggerating that, but they seem not to be going the direction that most of their fan base wants them to go. You mentioned stock up, stock down. I'm going to give you one to add. I talked to Trey Horn, the athlete, wide receiver, strong safety, free safety prospect from Rabun Gap, Georgia, Nakuchi High School. You might want to put him on your stock up report. He had some very positive things to say about things he was hearing from the Florida State staff who was up to visit him last week. They've also offered a couple of his teammates since then. But Trey Horn, if you have not had a chance to watch his film and you're listening to this or watching this, go and pull up Trey Horn on the Huddle highlights. I believe his stock is rising with Florida State. They made, based on what he told me, Fish, it made it beyond clear that he was a wanted man by the Seminoles. So add him to your stock up, stock down report. Anybody, I know that you've obviously been visiting high schools. Anybody new on your radar?
There's a kid at, I had put out a list with Jaylen Jesuit, this Bryce Fitzgerald kid, who's a 2025. I believe he'll end up getting an FSU offer pretty soon. He's got, they're not a school that Florida State's done a lot of work at in the past, but he's definitely a guy that you got to get to know the name Bryce Fitzgerald out of Jaylen Jesuit. He's got Miami, Michigan, Auburn. I'm pretty sure Florida State will be one of his next offers once they visit him. He has a chance to be a very good player out of Jaylen Jesuit.
All right. Well, listen, you've given me one of your stock down guys, and I know you'll have several on your list, which will be on the Osceola probably tomorrow, if not sooner. But you can go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com to read Fish's stock up, stock down report. It will be behind the paywall. We do have some offer stories that are going to be free that you can access and look at. We've got some spring sports, but we'd love for you, if you're not a subscriber to the Osceola, to go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com and check us out. But that's where you get Fish's up and down, stock up, stock down report. And he also does a weekly Fish Bits on our premium recruiting message board, which our subscribers really enjoy. It's probably our most active thread of anything we do, minus a post-game football thread. But Fish, so I'm going to ask you, giving us stock down on Ty Hilton, and I believe you based off what I've read. He seems very enamored with Florida right now, but of course Florida is the last school he has visited, and let's all remember that these kids are at an impressionable age, and a lot of times they're going to leave a campus. Whatever campus they left last is going to be their favorite. We've seen that happen with the linebacker out of Texas who loved Florida State after his visit, said they were up there, and then I think he has Bryce has now committed to Ohio State. But
anyway. I mean, the last time we did a stock up, stock down, we'll give everybody a little tidbit into this. We had Landon Thomas as one of those stock ups, and he ended up committing to Florida State. So we're on top of this. We're going to continue to give you guys the best recruiting information we feel on the internet is regarding Florida State football. And I look to continue to putting out the information for you guys.
All right, well, guys, so you've given me Ty Hilton stock down. Give me one stock up guy, and then we'll let everybody else read about it. But give me one stock up.
I think Jabari Howard from Westland Hialeah High School, the DB who's committed to Michigan State. He's a kid that Randy's putting a lot of interest into and going to recruit him heavily. He's one of those kids I think Randy relates to. Big physical corner, can play safety also. When you look at the history of the corners that Randy recruits, wherever he's been. This kid fits that same mold. I think they have a legitimate shot. They've had him on campus a couple times, and they're going to go all in on him. So that's one of the guys from the stock up.
All right. Well, listen, you mentioned the excitement about the upcoming season, and Kurt Weiler wrote a article yesterday that's on the site that you can access by going to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. But Pro Football Focus has 6 players from FSU rated in their top 100 draft board for next year. Jared Verse comes in first at number 7. Johnny Wilson second at 37. Trey Benson third at 69. Jaheim Bell fourth at 76. Jordan Travis at 79. And Fintrell Cypress, one of the newest additions to the roster, at 95. Fish, that's impressive where Florida State's come, having 6 guys that could go in essentially the first 3.5 rounds of the draft next year.
I definitely think Verse, Wilson, and Benson are the 3 that are definitely going to get a lot of interest. Bell, it's tight ends you saw this year. I thought Michael Myers was a first-round pick. He's kind of one of those guys that is more of an H-back tight end than a traditional tight end. So you got to wonder with his size where he'll go in the draft. We've always talked about this, and this was part of the reason I had Jamie Robinson in the 5th round. The NFL scouts first look for upside and potential once they get out of that first round. And that's the thing, is how much length the guy has, how long and athletic they are will overshadow maybe a guy just being a really good football player, which Jaheim Bell is a very good football player. But does he have that NFL potential at his size? You got to look at the NFL. There's not a lot of 6'2" tight ends. So he has to fit a specific type of need or go to a team that wants to use him in their scheme. So it's not a knock. It's just what I've always noticed with NFL scouts.
Yeah. And listen, you might be able to add a 7th guy to this list because I did do some research on Keon Coleman, and he is expected, if he were to choose to come out, which he does not, he will have played 3 straight years by the end of next season. He is projected, he's by NFL Draft Buzz, and they put together a lot of ratings.
Yeah, I think if he comes to FSU, I think behind Verse, he'll be the 2nd guy off the board with these guys.
I think his draft stock will only go up because he's going to be playing in a much better offense with a much more wide receiver friendly system.
Yeah.
So I think it would certainly help. Yeah, so you can see 7 guys, and that's just the ones we know about right now. But anyway, so that's a little bit putting the cart before the horse. But we'll see how it goes. But Fish, anything else before we get ready to wrap it up on a short Cinco de Mayo Friday show?
No, enjoy your day, man. Grab a beer for me.
I'm gonna grab a margarita first, but
all right, man.
I've got to go do some recruiting work. I go watch and take pictures of the kids coming in for recruiting weekend. So I'll be down on FSU's campus watching Key and Coleman arrive and
all right,
upload pictures to the site so everybody
just
can
kidnap Keon Coleman and get him on the sideline, and we'll pressure him into committing.
By the way, Fish, I do think it's going to take more than $100 to get somebody to commit on.
No, I know, I'm joking. Man.
I know. Yeah, I'm joking too. But yeah, listen. Again, if you're not an Osceola subscriber, please go to floridastate.rivals.com. Check us out. There's free content. You can also go to theosceola.com. They both take you to the same place. But we are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12:30. 99% of the time, it's a live show, so you can interact with us. It's usually a combination of Fish, myself, Kurt Weiler, Bob Ferrante, Jerry Cutts, and we have some guests from time to time, and we're trying to line up some for next week, including Ashland Barker from Iowa Western. He has told me he will join us. We're trying to work out his schedule to get him on Seminole Sidelines. So Fish and I may be talking to him on Monday or Wednesday. But we hope to have a chance to have a conversation with him on Seminole Sidelines before he visits. We hope everyone has a great weekend, a safe Cinco de Mayo, and we look forward to catching up with everybody next week on Seminole Sidelines. Fish, I appreciate it, buddy.
No problem.